Hello everyone. Welcome to this session of the webinar. Thank you for joining us today. The session will be for about an hour. The talk/presentation will be approximately for 45 minutes. You can like send in your questions after this session. I'll try to answer them one by one to the best of my knowledge. Uh, I'll just mention the intent for this webinar is to give you guys an idea about machine learning and specifically a topic in machine learning called linear regression. So like if you don't understand the entire thing, it's fine. But it's to give you guys an idea of how machine learning is actually and what is happening behind the scenes. So if you guys are interested, you can from this go ahead and study the subject deeper if you want to. All right, let's get started. The topic for this session is an introduction to linear regression and its implementation. So right off the bat, the first thing you must have noticed here is the term linear regression, right? So let's just get familiarized with what this term is. So in order to, in my opinion, to best understand what linear regression is, let's go back to why computers were actually made. Let's realize why they were made, okay? So back in the day, mathematicians and scientists, when at the time, they used to like study all these underlying principles in nature and all the math behind it. They realized that it involved sometimes a lot of calculations, like a lot of human labor intensive calculations, and they wanted to focus a lot of the time and resources on things where it involved actual like logical human requirement work. So that's when they realized they needed a machine that could do these computations and things faster than the average human. So that's why computers were initially made. But as time progressed, as these people came up with more new algorithms, more mathematical things, they realized that it was not even possible to just even sit down and do them all manually also. So that's when they realized they needed even more powerful ways of doing it. So they used more faster and efficient computers to do it. But then to the common eye, to the everyday person, they thought the machine is doing things on its own, it's making decisions on its own. They didn't know there was actually math involved. They didn't know they didn't know what was happening behind the scenes, okay? So people just went ahead and just decided to, let's just call it machine learning itself, because people think it's the machine that's actually doing the thing. So that's how the idea of the term machine learning came into existence. So now that we're on to about machine learning, let's see what machine learning is. Okay. So what is machine learning, right? Well, machine learning is essentially your computer having some form of intelligence, some form of decision-making capability, so that there's like minimum human intervention involved. So machine learning at the end comes down to three simple things. One is the task, your objective, or whatever you want your machine to do. Second is the knowledge/intelligence it has. So this is referred to as in machine learning terms as experience. And so the third one is a tool to measure the experience it has gained. So you can measure how good is the experience it has gained. So I will show you what all these things are in linear regression. So now that we know what machine learning is, we have an idea of what machine learning is. Let's just look at the types of machine learning. So machine learning has two types. One is supervised learning and the other is unsupervised learning. So I'll explain this with an example, okay? So let's just say you have a task at hand that is to differentiate a picture of a cat and a dog. So you want your machine to identify this pictures, if it's a picture of a cat or if it's a picture of a dog. In the case of supervised learning, how you answer this problem or how you address this problem is that you give your machine a bunch of pictures. You say also to your machine, so this picture is of a cat and this picture is of a dog. Try to learn their features, try to identify the characteristics in the picture of a cat and the picture of a dog. So that is supervised learning. The counterpart of this unsupervised learning is that you give a bunch of pictures of cats and dogs, but you don't tell what is which picture is of that of a cat and which is that of a dog. So your machine has to on its own identify some characteristics and make some meaning out of the pictures you give. So that is what is unsupervised learning. I'll give you some examples of both of them. So one example for supervised learning, which is seen in everyday life, is Spotify. So I bet every one of you like use Spotify, uh, or any, like even Amazon Music actually. So these platforms, what they do is that they will first understand your choice of music. So let's just say you listen to I guess jazz music a lot. So what they'll do is in whatever jazz music, whatever songs you're listening into jazz category, they will take that, send that to the Spotify server, and what they'll do is they will try to identify the musical elements in your choice of song. Like for example, the tempo of the song, the beats per minute in your song, then even the genre actually. So in this case, jazz music maybe. So they will try to identify similar songs like such, and then what they will do is they will recommend you those songs. So on top of this, what they also do is they'll categorize or like rank. Let's say they recommend you 10 songs, it will rank out of those 10, 1 to 10, which one you listen to the most. So that's like a really cool example for in your everyday life. You have Spotify, which is actively taking in your choice of music and then recommending you better ones always. And for unsupervised learning, it would be Google Photos. So you guys must have noticed like this picture over here. You see this pictures of all the faces that are seen in all your photos. So essentially, if you click on the face of a person in this picture, you will see all the photos of this person in whichever this person is in. So this comes into unsupervised learning. So you didn't say anything to your Google Photos, right? You just gave it a bunch of photos. It itself on its own identifies the faces and then categorizes pictures to those faces. So like it's a neat, convenient feature, right? So that's when you can see unsupervised learning in your everyday life. So I'll just give one more set of example. So how we use machine learning is we actually had a task of making a rover, identifying a sign in front of it if it's saying turn left or turn right. So we actually gave our rover a bunch of pictures of left and right, and made it like learn out of it, saying, so this is a picture of a left turn and this is a picture of a right turn. And we made it identify efficiently as to what is left and what is right. And so this comes under supervised learning. Now, unsupervised learning, one more example would be, you can actually, with the help of unsupervised learning, reduce the size of images. So like you can think about it like if you have like high resolution photos, let's say like some 10 MB or 20 MB, you can bring this down to a much smaller size with the help of unsupervised learning. Now you might think like it will reduce like the like distinct parts of your image. It won't reduce it too much. It will be like a reasonable amount. So unsupervised learning comes under a huge use for reducing the size of images. Okay, so we know what machine learning is. We know the types in machine learning. We've seen some examples. Let's get to the actual topic of this session. So what is linear regression? Well, let's just look at this plot. We'll just understand it through this. If you see in this plot, there's a bunch of points, right? There's a few points diagonally moving here. So what if I asked you to give me an equation so that the graph of this equation, the plot of this equation, will draw like a diagonal line over here so that it will touch as many points as possible. And at the same time, whichever points it doesn't touch, it will maintain minimum distance from those points. So you might say, why do I need like a specific subject or some algorithm to do this? I could just draw like a rough line over here, right? Yeah, well, sure, I agree. You can just draw like a rough line. It will still give our purpose served. But then if I showed you something like this, would you still be able to say the same thing confidently? I don't really think you can, because there's really a lot of points here. You can't really tell if a line like this would be the perfect one for this, or a line would like this would be perfect. So what linear regression does is it just easily finds you the most suitable equation to draw on this plot. But then the next question that arises is, what can you do with this information? What can you do with an equation that can just draw a line that is fitting well to this data? Well, so what you can do with this is that your equation here will know the trend that your data is taking. So what does this mean? Then you have an equation, you can give it any x value and it will give the corresponding y value, right? So with the help of such a general equation, you can predict things in the future. So like you can make use of this with, like, say, investing assets like stock market or like land or any kind of property investment. So you can, like, um, let's just say currently the value of some stock is 2000 rupees. So in the future, is you want to know how will it go, will it reduce or will it increase? Then with the help of linear regression, you can identify that it might increase or decrease. You can't get the exact value, but even an approximate will help, right? You are increasing your value, your money value. So with the help of linear regression, you can do something like this. You can, like, make some good use of such a possibility. So we know now what linear regression does. So let's see how we can actually apply it, how we can implement it. So here I have like a pictorial representation of how you can implement any machine learning algorithm essentially. So how does it work? First, you need a training set. So what is training set? Training set is basically the points you saw earlier. It's basically to tell your linear regression, here is a trend of data, I want you to identify something out of it. So that is what a training set is. You basically give the points like I showed you earlier. You just give those, you give such a graph to it. So that's a training set. So this training set, you have to provide it to linear regression. Then what your linear regression will do is it will output something, and that something is the equation I was talking about earlier. This equation is just commonly referred to as hypothesis or inference, but we'll just call this hypothesis because that's what it's commonly called as. And the short form for it is just a H. So to this H, which is your equation, you'll provide whatever X value, and then the corresponding Y value you'll get. So the prediction rate, like that's what our output should be at the end. So let's look at the first thing in this diagram. The first thing being the training set. So what does a training set look like? So here on the left side, I basically have a tabular column. I just basically wrote like some points on a graph in the form of tabular column. Really simple, nothing different from earlier plot, just the X values and then the Y values. Okay, so on the right side here, I just have some common notations. So let's just get familiarized with what these are. So the first thing you need to know about some notations in machine learning is the number of training examples. So what do you mean by number of training examples? It's basically all the number of points in your graph from earlier. So in this case, in this tabular column on the left side, just ignore the last column. You would say the number of training examples over here are 4, because 4 columns, right? So Rm will be 4 in this case. So the next one is X superscript I. So what does this mean? This is just to indicate a specific value. So let's just say I want you to tell me the value of X superscript 3. It would be 784. And if I ask you to tell me the Y value, I mean, if I ask you to tell me the value of Y superscript 2, then it would be 32. And X and YI, Xi, Yi together is just referred to as the ith training example. So I guess nothing complicated yet. Everything seems straightforward and simple. Let's just actually try to do this in the form of code. Okay. So for machine learning, there's 2 languages which are commonly used. One is MATLAB and one is Octave. I'll be using Octave because it's open source. You guys can try MATLAB also. There's MATLAB online. You can try for free. But the only problem with trying online is that you will find it somewhat inconvenient. So I would recommend you guys to, if possible, download Octave because it's a free language. I will provide all these all the code for this later on. So I'll just show you the training set part in the form of code. So let me just open the Octave interface. So one thing to note when you open Octave is that you will see on the left side, in your case, you'll see mostly like desktop documents, pictures here. So just go to the folder wherever you have your files. The code files which I'll be giving you. So just go to that folder. In my case, I have it in this file called implementation. I'm just going to press Control L. So Control L will clear off my screen here. So I gathered a data set and I'll be loading it in like such. So now my Word data over here has all my data values. I'm just going to tell to take the X values out of it. So now my X has the X values, and now I'll just tell you to take the Y values because this is supervised learning. You need to tell what is the expected output for your data set. And I'll just tell the number of training examples. So now I've told the X, Y, and M in my data set. So we'll just look at what the graph looks like. So in order to look at the graph, I have to define a function. So here I have this file called plot data. I'll just mention this line for plotting data. You can just like do copy paste this. So it's fine if you don't follow it. You can understand this better if you want to study the subject deeper. So now we will look at. So now you see this is my data set, which I got from online. You can see the points seem to be following some sort of a pattern here. So at the end, I want my linear regression to find some equation like this way, so that I can predict things in the future, right? So we've seen the training set in the form of code. Now, the next thing in our that pictorial representation that we saw earlier, it was learning algorithm, right? So let's look at the learning algorithm part. I'll just show you first what the output of your learning algorithm will look like. So over here, I just have my H, the hypothesis word in its short form here. And here, what you see here, it seems somewhat familiar to the form AX plus B equation, right? So it is exactly that. But instead of A and B, I'm just using theta 0 and theta 1. It's just common. I mean, it's just a machine learning notation that is specifically used. So instead of A and B, I'll be using theta 0 and theta 1. So what I'll do is, I'll show you what this equation will look like for some values of theta 0 and theta 1. So here, I'll just open up this. So we saw, I mentioned here, what it looks like, say, when theta 0 is 1.5 and when theta 1 is 1. So you can see the line goes like this. So you can imagine, say, if you have a data set that goes something like horizontally like this, then this would be a good fit for it, right? Let's just look at one more, two more examples. When theta 0 equals 0, theta 1 equals 0.5, that would mean a diagonal line. So say our data set goes something like this. We want a linear regression to say, take theta 0, 0, and theta 1 is 0.5. So what about the case when theta 1 equals 1, theta 0 equals 1, and theta 1 equals 0.5? It will look somewhat like the same like the previous one, but a little higher. So that's basically what your linear regression outputs. So now you kind of see where I'm going with this, right? Now I'm getting into the math part of the topic. But you guys might know that there's always a way to work around things. But in machine learning, right, it's recommended you know the math, because if you don't know the math, you will actually spend a lot of time in trying to fix errors. What I mean by that is that in coding, right, in general, 30% of your time is just spent in coding, and then 70% is spent in debugging. So if you know the math, right, you can easily debug essentially. You can get rid of the errors faster. And if you try to circumvent around things and like try to just get things done without knowing how it actually works, then essentially, let's say you're differentiating between a cat and a dog, you'll have your machine learning algorithm saying your cat is a dog or your dog is a cat, or the error will be very high basically. So you don't want such a problem occurring, right? Especially in the case when you want to predict your asset value in the future. You don't want your asset prediction to be like negative while it's actually going to be positive. So it's important you know the math behind this. So if you guys remember from the machine learning definition earlier, I mentioned saying there's three things. One is the task, second thing is the experience, third thing is a measuring tool. So now let's actually look at the measuring tool in linear regression. So the machine learning, the measuring tool for linear regression is called as a cost function. So what is cost function? Cost function will tell the error in my linear regression output. So let's just say, look at this sample equation that is plotted with some data set on the graph. You can see there's a pointer red over here, and there's this brown point like the other ones. So what this brown point is the provided data set. So we needed our equation to output when, say, x value is 7 something, it should say that the y value is something like 5. But then our graph, the actual equation, is saying for the input 7, the output is somewhere 7, y equals 7. We need it to, but this is not what we want, right? So let's, in order to tell our linear regression, the error value over here, we can just try like taking the difference between these 2 points. So I can just do like this red point minus this brown point. So that's what I've written down here. I've just written the h minus y. Y is what we have provided, h is that prediction thing. So I'll just take the difference. This will give me the error. So I can make use of this information. I'll just square this error just in case the error value is negative. For the convenience of calculation, I'll just have it squared. And over here, I'm just taking the aggregate because let's say in the case of some class where there's a test conducted and you want to know the class average of the test in the class, what would you do? You would take all the marks of every student, you will take an aggregate of it, and then divide by the number of students. So this will essentially give you the class average of a particular test. So likewise, I'm just doing the exact same thing here. I'm just going to take the aggregate and then divide by the number of training examples, RM. And then I'll be dividing by 2 also. It's just for the sake of convenience in calculation, like how I'm squaring here. I'm just going to divide by 2 also. So in case you didn't understand this equation, I'll try to explain it better in the next few slides. So the same thing, the same equation, I just went ahead and wrote it here. And I'll just mention what the notation for this is. So the notation for your cost function is just written as j. And then within brackets, you just mention the variables involved. And one more thing to note is that your cost function is also known as the squared error function. So let's try to better understand what this error measuring function is. What is this cost function thing? So I'll just remove one theta. So you saw like theta 1 and theta 0 earlier, right? I'll just remove, say, theta 0. We'll make our cost function as measuring for the equation theta 1x. So just keep that in mind and look at this graph over here. You have 3 points given in this graph. So essentially our linear regression, our expected output from linear regression would be to draw like a diagonal line over here such that all these points are being touched. So there is a method that is linear regression will do this automatically. But before we see the automated part, we'll actually try to manually understand this. So we'll try various values for a theta 1 and see how it actually plots over here. So I've gone ahead and tried with theta 1 equals 1. So essentially your equation will be x equals y. So whatever x value you give, that will be the exact same y value. And you can see that it's actually fitting all our points when theta 1 equals 1. Let's see what our cost function says about this. we know that all these points are being touched, right? Meaning there's no error in this. So essentially, our program should say that there is no error in this, meaning our error should be zero numerically. So here I've just written the cost function. I've substituted my h, and then I've just accordingly, for all the values our xi, yi can take, I've just substituted I1 equals 1. So x1, y1 is 1 and 1. So here you can see 1 minus 1 squared plus 2 minus 2 squared plus 3 minus 3 squared. So if you simplify this, you get 0. So you can see that our cost function is actually giving the right output. So the expected output is what we're getting. I'll just go ahead and plot another graph simultaneously as we do this. You just have a look at this. You don't need to understand this. It's just a cost function versus the theta 1 thing. So here I've just plotted one point. When our theta 1 is 1, our cost function is 0. So I'm just going to simultaneously do one more graph as we understand our cost function better. So let's just try theta 1 equals 0.5 this time. We can see the line is a bit lower, meaning our error won't be 0, it'll be something of a higher value. Let's see if our cost function actually says that the error is higher. Here I've just simplified it. I've substituted the values accordingly. You can see that the cost function says the error is 0.58, meaning our cost function is still working. So this is the graph that I mentioned that I'll be doing simultaneously. So here I mentioned when theta 1 equals 0.5, the y value, that is j of theta, is something around 0.58. So now what I've done is I've gone ahead and tried various other theta 1 values and plotted this graph on the right side. So you can see here, there seems to be like a U-shaped graph being done. So what can you make out of this? Well, essentially, you have to get your linear regression to give you the least amount of error. In this case, when theta 1 equals 1, you have your j of theta saying it's 0. So this point where your theta 1 will give you the least error is known as the convergence point. Let's actually look at the code form of this. So I'll just show you guys the code implementation of this. So what I'll do is I'll just mention this line. This line is basically how do I say this? So it's like a concept in coding called code vectorization. You essentially can do matrix multiplication and then multiply or like do calculations faster in coding. So this line helps me do it. Then I'll just try my cost function when theta equals when theta 0 and theta 1 are equal to zeros. When both are zeros. So here I mentioned theta value, and now I'll just define my cost function. So here I'll just type in the code for it. I will explain in a second what this code is here. Okay, so this essentially what I'm doing here is here you can see this seems familiar, right? I'm just taking the difference here, h minus y, and then I'm squaring this h minus y, and then here I'm taking the aggregate of it, and then here I'm just dividing this aggregate by 2 and m, like I mentioned earlier. So this is just the exact same cost function, but in the form of code. Let's see what our cost function says. What is the error for when theta is just zeros? So it says my error is 32.073. So this is a really high error. Our linear regression's objective will be to reduce this error to as low as possible. Now we have tried theta 0 manually here, and even in the example I showed you earlier, I tried theta values manually. So where is the automated part, right? Like where is the specialty of linear regression, or like the quote unquote machine learning part. So this is what it is. It's called as the gradient descent. Also, you can refer to it as the learning part. So essentially, gradient descent is just the algorithm that will find you the minimum value for your theta. So that minimum value is what we called as the convergence point earlier. So what will happen is, right, like we initialized earlier theta as 0 in our code. So let's just say you can take any value. I just tried 0, but here I'm just going to say try on this top of this hill here, some theta value, theta 0, theta 1. Let's see, our cost function seemingly really high, right? So our objective will be to come down, from the top of this hill to come down somewhere like here or here. So in these two cases, this depression and this depression, our cost function value seems to be the lowest. So how does gradient descent do is, what it will do is, it will start from the point, like I mentioned earlier. It will look around in all directions from this point. And what it will do is, it will identify in which direction my cost function is reducing. So if you say, let's just say this gradient descent looks up, you can see that the cost function is high over here. So like obviously, preferably this is the direction it should go, right? So by using the measuring tool cost function, it will identify that this direction seems to be the lowest error. So it will go this direction. So likewise, it will iterate a few times until it will just come down to the convergence point. So here I've iterated a few times and then I've come down to the convergence point. Now, this is the graphical form of it. So let's look at the mathematical part of our gradient descent. So here's the mathematical part. So there's quite a few symbols here. This actually speaking not much. So let's break it down what it is. So here, what this symbol means is that I'm asking my theta value to be updated. It's just a mathematical symbol to update theta value. So what is happening here is, so I have my theta where j can be either 0 or 1. It can be more than 0 and 1, but we are taking only 0 and 1 for simple understanding. So I will be writing theta j here minus alpha into my cost function partially differentiated with respect to theta 0 and theta 1. So in case you didn't understand, it's fine. I will try to simplify this like how I simplified my cost function. So before I go to the simplification part, there is one more thing about gradient descent. It's that you need to simultaneously update your theta 0 and theta 1 values. So what does this mean is that I mentioned, right, our j will take 0 and 1 values here, and then we partially differentiate our cost function. So what you have to do is first you have to partially differentiate with respect to theta 0. Then you have to partially differentiate with respect to theta 1. And then you have to change your theta 0 and theta 1 values accordingly. So what will happen is, if you don't follow this simultaneous update procedure, is that, so let's just say here itself I update my theta 0. So I write this theta 0 over here instead of temp 0. And what will happen is the theta 0 value over here, when I differentiate for theta 1, the theta 0 value will be different. So we don't want this confusion to happen. And essentially your linear regression will follow a very inefficient way. So it's recommended to follow this it's just recommended to follow this method to simultaneously update the values. So like earlier, like how in cost function, I just removed one theta. Here also, I'll just remove one theta. So here I've just gone ahead and written the function what it looks like with just one theta value. And let's just say we partially differentiate this cost function with respect to theta 1. So what will happen is, imagine this, the gradient descent plot from earlier, but in the form of 2D. I'm just going to start from a top point here. So by partially differentiating this point, I get something known as the slope of the function at this point. So the slope in mathematical terms over here, it indicates a positive slope. So I'm getting some information out of this by partially differentiating it. And that is I'm being able to say that the uh, point over here is following a positive slope. So what this formula over here will do, it'll make use of that positive slope value, and then my theta 1, which is over here, the respective theta 1, will get decreased. See, you see theta 1 is being subtracted, meaning my theta 1 will reduce. So my gradient descent will just go down like this and then eventually find the convergence point. So this is in the case when my point starts on right side. Now, what is special about linear regression is that it's automatic, right? So it has to follow the same method even on the left side, right? So let's look at the left side part of it. So in the left side case, when you partially differentiate on this side, your slope turns out to be a negative slope. So in mathematical terms, it's just referred to as a negative slope. And then what will happen is you substitute a negative value over here, and it'll be minus into minus. And so it means your theta 1 will be added to a value here. And then a theta 1, the respective theta 1 value for this point over here will be increasing. So you'll be updating your theta value such that it'll be increasing. Then this point will keep coming down. And then eventually you'll reach the convergence point. So you guys would have noticed now I mentioned everything in the equation of gradient descent except this alpha over here. So what this alpha is that it's how steep of a jump it should take in every iteration. So you can see over here, I've drawn a graph. So my gradient descent is taking steps down here. So if my alpha value is really small, you can see that there's multiple steps, multiple iterations. And we don't want it to actually be this inefficient. It has to like take a good amount of steps and reach as fast as possible. In coding, there is something called as time complexity. So the objective of time complexity is that it should be taking as little time as possible. So your alpha value is something you have to decide on your own. There are ways to do it automatically, but that involves a lot of like in-depth calculations. Like if you go in depth of machine learning, you learn that better. But for now, for beginner's sake, it's fine if you do like trial and error and find out a good alpha value by yourself. Now, I've mentioned how alpha will act if it's a small value. What if the alpha value is really huge? So what will happen is then it'll take a huge step, okay? So it'll again take a huge step. But there is no guarantee that the next huge step will be at the convergence point. It could be something higher. And then what happens is in implementation, this after this huge step, it'll again take another huge step. It won't come closer to the convergence point. So this seems to be an even bigger problem. So it will never reach your convergence point. At least when your alpha is small, it will come down to the convergence point. But when alpha is too large, it seems to be overshooting. It'll basically like go from here to here and then here. It'll never reach your convergence point. So when you see your learning algorithm is going like this, you just reduce your alpha value. So in this equation, let's try actually substituting this j of theta value with the cost function. So here I've just worked it out. I've written down my cost function substituted. So this is the exact same cost function, nothing has changed. And here I've just expanded my h over here. You can see theta 0 plus theta 1x. And then I've just gone ahead and substituted my j when it's 0 and j when it's 1, partially differentiated this. You can like work this out later, and if you want to see, it's just simple partial differentiation. So you guys will like it's just simple differentiation, nothing different. If you don't understand this, it's fine. So now we've seen the training set in the form of code. We've seen cost function in the form of code. So let's actually look at gradient descent in the form of code, the actual exciting part of machine learning, the automatic part, the machine learning, quote unquote, machine learning part. So what I'll do is first I'll mention the number of steps that my gradient descent should take. I've already figured it out for my problem that 1500 seems to be a good amount. So I'm just assigning my iterations to be 1500. And my alpha value to trial and error, I found it to be a value as small as 0.01 is working out really good. And now I'll just define my gradient descent. So here, I'm just going to mention the whole equation. So this line is that partially differentiated part, the recent slide that you saw. And likewise, when delta, so this first delta line is when theta is equal to 0. I mean, theta j is 0. Sorry, theta j when j is equal to 0 in this first line. And the second line, it's theta j when j is equal to 1. Then just one last line. So this is that actual gradient descent formula, that alpha minus the partial differentiated part. Okay, so let's run our gradient descent. Let's see what our linear regression will output. So I'm just going to run the function here. All right, so you see a theta values, what our linear regression says is take these two as your theta values and you will have a good prediction output. So essentially this is my convergence point. You can increase the number of iterations and also reduce the alpha value to see how the values will change, but it won't go likely lesser than this because this is my convergence point. And now that we have a theta value, theta values, um, we wanted our graph to look something like diagonal, right? Let's see for these theta values, will it actually come out diagonal? So let's see that. I'm just writing the code for that. And then I'll just mention for the sake of clarity, what the legends are. Right, so it's supposed to look like this. So you'll have your diagonal value over here. I mean, diagonal plot. So this is what for the corresponding theta 0 and theta 1 values are. Now, so one last thing I'll mention is the actual gradient descent plot for linear regression actually doesn't look like this. It doesn't look like this. Well, let's see actually how it looks like then. So I will just run this code. This will essentially, yep. So this is the thing about linear regression. No matter what, your graph will always look like this. So something around like this, but it'll never have multiple like depressions like in the previous graph I showed you. So here you can see there's two depressions, right? One over here, one over here. But in the case of linear regression, you won't have such a problem. You'll always have one like least point. So you can see like this minus 3.6 and 1.1. When a theta 0 is minus 3.6 would be like somewhere here, and theta 1 1.1 is somewhere here. So you can imagine like the point is somewhere here, my theta 0 and theta 1 values. So essentially, then we can say our linear regression has come to the convergence point. We have a good fit to our data set, and then we can go ahead and predict for a different value of x, which is not seen by the data. So I'll just try when x equals 7. Yeah, so it says my prediction is 4.5345. So in this case, this is for a different objective. So accordingly, I've seen that the prediction when x is 7, my y value is 4.5345. So we've achieved our objective. This is what linear regression essentially does. And essentially, one last thing I'll show you is also this. This is how it looks like. The initially when the graph starts out, the linear regression. In our case, we tried when theta 0 and theta 1 are 0, 0. Here I just tried it with minus 900 minus 0.1. And on the right side, you see this graph, right? You can just imagine this to be a 2D form of a 3D graph. Like think of this circle as an inverted cone, with the small circle being the tip of the cone, and then the bigger circle being the top portion of the cone. And then you can see that a gradient descent starts from here, and then it will go down a few points, and then reach the convergence point. You see then the plot has fit perfectly here. All right, so with this, you have now learned a machine learning algorithm. I hope you guys found it in some way interesting or got an idea about machine learning. So we can now proceed with the Q&A. So if you guys have any questions, you can send them in the chat. Okay, so we have one person asking, is this what Excel uses for generating the graphs? By that, do you mean the programming language? Well, Excel, it doesn't work on the... Excel doesn't use Octave. They have their own way of implementing it. So what is the percentage of ML predicting the future, right? Well, okay, so to answer this question, right, it all depends on your purpose first. So let's say you want to predict for an asset. Let's just take the asset itself, asset example. You want it to be a really good prediction so that you don't want to carelessly invest money. So then you want your convergence point to be as low as possible. So in that case, it would be it should be like the best you can get if you go to the convergence point itself. Maybe like specifically to answer your question, it would be preferably 90%. I mean, obviously you'd want at least that much guarantee, right? So 90% is a good place to sit. You can go higher than this. There are ways you can actually get 100% also. Believe it or not, it is possible. You can actually get your learning algorithm to predict perfectly. To explain that, you need to study the subject deeper. There's a lot more involved. So we saw linear equations. There's quadratic. There's equations to the power 3, 4, 5. Then you can also actually use neural networks. So there's various ways to do it. So I hope that answered your question.
Hello, sir. Can I ask you a question?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Sir, actually, I wanted to know, can we transform material that is in computer typesetting to handwritten materials using machine learning?
Oh, you mean like the computer, say if I type something, it has to write it down on its own?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely possible. You can like, I think the only difficult part would be to identify how you can make it right. But in terms of making it identify what you have given input and how it should write, that can be done, yeah. So like, it is actually possible through machine learning. You can say, ask you to write hello. You can give it videos of people writing the word hello or writing all the letters HELLO. So then it can on its own understand how a person is writing, and this can be done, yeah.
Are there any examples that I can look on to?
You mean like people who have already implemented this?
Yes, sir.
I don't have any particular example in it, but I think a similar one would be by the startup company by Elon Musk. I forgot what the startup is called. They basically showed it videos of solving a Rubik's cube, and so they made an arm that can solve the Rubik's cube on its own. So when you can get a machine to solve a Rubik's cube, I think writing should be like a piece of cake.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can check out that, like the, I don't remember the startup's name. You can look it up.
Actually, I saw one webinar and they gave one example, but I forgot that forgot to jot it down somewhere. So I just thought I would ask again.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, you can check out this one.
Okay, sir.
Yep. Okay, we have one person asking, which year do you recommend to do ML project? I mean, like, which year doing ML project, like 2D, I mean, like second or third year? I mean, you don't need a particular year to start something. You can start whenever you want. You can see the basic requirements for learning machine learning is uh, knowledge in matrices, like the subject, matrix multiplication and all that. Then differentiation. Uh, so as long as your 11th and 12th maths is like fun, you can do it anytime. First year also is fine. I think first year would be best actually because you'll have most free time then. So that would be really nice to do. Then it doesn't matter which year you do it. Okay, I think we have about like 5 more minutes. So yeah.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
For the training purposes, can we ask a machine learning program to create different images that it can use for training itself only? So, like it's a loop. It creates an image and identifies it, and this goes on.
I didn't get you. Could you actually repeat?
Sir, I was asking that can we make an algorithm which generates an image and
Hmm.
then it identifies it so that it is self-learning and generating images also.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've seen this done before. So yeah, like it will. You can ask it to like just randomly generate some image through like um, you can just like ask it to randomly assign pixel values, and then it can try to create more such images, and you can find something interesting. Like you can still see how what a machine is doing on its own without saying anything to it. So that's something that can easily be done also. Yeah, that would be actually a very interesting project to work on. You can like just create an image, assign random pixel values, ask it to identify some pattern in it. This would come under unsupervised learning, by the way. So you can ask it to identify some pattern in it, and then try to create more such images of such pattern. And then you can see actually a machine creating things on its own. So that's actually something. Recruitment in developer domain. Um, yeah, we'll be doing it in the near future. You can actually follow social media handles and you'll be notified when it happens. Um, re- you want to ask something?
No, sir.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Reinforcement learning. To be honest, even I'm not that familiar with it, but uh, I can't really answer that question. So excuse me for that. Sounds similar to GAN. Yes, it is. The image thing. Yeah. Okay. So do we have time left, or is this a wrap up now?
Yeah, I think we are done with all the questions, so we can conclude the meeting.
Okay. Okay, so thank you guys for attending the session. There will be a YouTube recording of this uploaded in our YouTube channel later. You can follow us in all our handles in Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. You'll if you want this code and this presentation, you can find in the YouTube video's description. And if you want to maybe get a better idea of this, or like reach out to me for some help with some project or something in machine learning, I can help you out. So you can reach me through our social media handle. So in the chat box, we've sent you a feedback form. So we'd really appreciate if you can give any feedback. So I guess that's about it. I hope I didn't miss out anything. Okay. Thank you guys for joining. This will be it.